Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of Hong Kong Horror. Tonight, we're going to be talking about something that everyone in Hong Kong knows about. You may have heard of something called hong jaak, which refers to a stigmatized property, a unit where someone has died. Whether it's murder, someone ending their own life, or even if it's just an accidental or unattended death, once it happens inside, the place is forever marked. In Cantonese, hong means ominous, and jaak means residence. Together, it basically means ominous residence. Because of strong cultural taboos surrounding death and spirits, these properties are always heavily discounted on the market, sometimes by 30% or more, but that's not always a good thing. It's very similar to Japan's accident properties. The key difference? In Japan, real estate agents are required by law to disclose if a recent unnatural death happened, usually within the last 3 years. But in Hong Kong, there's no law saying that they have to list the property as such, unless you ask. If asked, then they must answer honestly, even if the death happened decades ago. So unless you know what to look for, or if you ask the right questions, you might end up living in a place with a very dark history. But for the most part, most agents are very upfront about this. Even if they don't say anything, it's usually pretty obvious from the price alone. There are a ton of stories revolving around these type of units. Our story tonight will be one of those. After the story, I'll dive a little deeper into the cultural beliefs, so if you're interested, stick around till the end. A few years ago, a real estate agent in Hong Kong was approached by a family of 4, a husband and wife, Howard and Mandy, with their 2 children, who were 13 and 15 years old. They were looking to rent a modest apartment, something affordable. The agent had just the place, a unit in the exact area they were looking, listed at slightly below market price. On paper, it ticked all the boxes: good location, functional layout, quiet building, and most importantly, it wasn't a hong jaak. No one died inside, but the unit right next door was a hong jaak. A woman who had once lived there had jumped to her death from her balcony. The flat had remained empty since, and because the 2 units were so close, sharing only a thin wall, this unit that the agent wanted to show had also become hard to rent, so the owner was willing to go slightly below market price. The 2 units had an L-shaped layout, meaning that from the living room, you could see directly into the living room of the hong jaak. And although no one has died in this current unit, that view was enough to turn most renters away. The agent, to his credit, was completely transparent about the whole thing. He told the family up front that next door was a hong jaak. A woman had taken her own life there, and though this unit was clean, some people do mind, which is why the price was below market. Howard and Mindy didn't mind though. They weren't religious. They also didn't believe in ghosts or spirits or anything supernatural. To them, it was just a sad story, someone else's tragedy, nothing more. And at the price the owner was asking, it felt like a great deal. They came in for a showing, liked what they saw, and signed the paperwork within days. The couple, 2 children, and their live-in helper, May, from Indonesia. For those of you unfamiliar, in Hong Kong, it's very common for families with children to hire live-in domestic helpers. Usually they're from the Philippines or Indonesia. They help with childcare, cooking, cleaning, and are often the quiet backbone of the home. Now keep in mind, the family knew about the unit next door, but they didn't tell May. Not because they wanted to hide anything, exactly. They just didn't feel it was necessary. They weren't superstitious, and they assumed May wouldn't be either. Instead, they gave her one simple instruction: keep the living room blinds closed, unless you're cleaning the window. No need to have them open otherwise. Though not superstitious, it wouldn't hurt to be safe. May didn't ask why. She just did as she was told, and always kept the blinds shut in the living room, unless she had to go out to the balcony to hang clothes to dry. Howard and Mandy worked during the day, and both of the kids were in school, so most of the time it was just May at home by herself during the day. She would normally keep herself busy with her routine of household chores, washing the laundry in the morning, and then hanging them on the balcony to dry. She would also prepare ingredients to make dinner, before she headed out to pick the children up from school. It was a pretty standard routine, and nothing really out of the ordinary happened for the first month or so since the family and May moved in. That is, until the sounds began. It started subtly, about a month after they moved in. Howard and Mandy's bedroom was the one closest to the unit next door, the hong jaak. Their bed's headboard was pressed up against the shared wall, and that's where the sounds came from. It always happened between 2 and 3 a.m. Just a few fleeting moments each night, but enough to wake Mandy. At first, it sounded like muffled arguing, just beyond comprehension. Then, sometimes there were other noises, the scrape of furniture like a chair being dragged across the floor. Sometimes it would be a slam of a drawer, or something heavy shifting suddenly. It was sporadic and unpredictable. It didn't happen every night, but every few nights it would happen again. It was always brief, never lasting more than a few seconds. One night, Mandy pressed her ear to the wall, trying to make sure that the source of the noise was actually coming from the unit next door. But the moment she did, the sound stopped. Mandy was confused. The unit next door has been empty for years now. She was sure of that. So how is it possible that these sounds were coming from that unit? The strange thing was, she was the only one who ever heard them. Howard slept through everything. Not once had he stirred. Maybe she was just a light sleeper. That's what she told herself. It was weird, yes, but not terrifying. Not yet. So Mandy tried to push it aside, chalk it up to stress or bad dreams. But then, something else started happening. Each morning, Mandy would wake up around 6 in the morning, just before the kids to get ready for work, and to eat a quick breakfast with her family before May brought the children to school. And every morning, when she stepped into the living room, the blinds were wide open. At first, she assumed May had opened them, so she would just close them back up. May was always up early, cooking breakfast and getting the kids ready for school. So one morning, casually, Mandy reminded her, "Hey May, can you please remember to keep the blinds closed after you open them?" May paused. She looked genuinely puzzled. "Ma'am, I didn't open them," she said softly. "I close them every night before I go to bed. I thought maybe you opened them." Mandy said nothing, just smiled, nodded, and went on with her morning, thinking this was strange. May has been with them for years and was always an honest person. Again, Mandy brushed this off as well, as she had to rush to get to work. But this was the 4th time now that the blinds were open, and it wouldn't be the last. One night, Mandy couldn't sleep. It was late, maybe sometime past 2 a.m., and the flat was silent. Howard lay beside her, sound asleep. The kids were tucked in and snoozing away, but Mandy couldn't fall asleep, so she got up quietly and headed to the kitchen for a glass of water. She stood by the sink, sipping slowly, staring into the dark living room. That's when she noticed some movement in the corner of her eye. Her eyes flicked to the living room. The blinds, which were shut, were moving. Not much, just a little bit. It slowly shifted open in small, jerky motions, opening a few centimeters at a time, then stopping. A pause. Then another twitch. Then again. Mandy squinted. "Is there a draft? The window can't be open, right?" She set her glass down and stepped forward slowly. Blinds twitched again, just a little wider this time. And then, that's when she saw it. A hand. Thin and pale. It looked like a woman's hand with long nails, gripping the bottom corners of the blinds. It moved again, slowly, tugging the curtains open inch by inch, as if someone on the other side was trying to peek through. Mandy's breath caught in her throat. She backed away slowly, then bolted back to her room. She dove back into bed and yanked the sheets over her head like a child. She didn't dare wake Howard. He wouldn't believe her. He never believed in this kind of stuff. The next morning, Mandy was off work, as she needed to use some leftover PTO days before they expired. Howard left early for work. The kids were already at school, and May had just returned from dropping them off. Mandy waited until they were alone. Then quietly she asked, "Hey, May, after we moved in, have you noticed anything strange happening here? You're home more than the rest of us. Has everything been okay?" May was at the sink, casually rinsing the breakfast dishes as Mandy leaned against the counter behind her. The sound of running water filled the kitchen, steady, almost soothing. She didn't seem startled by the question, just paused for a moment thinking. Nothing really out of the ordinary, ma'am," she said with a light shrug. "The only strange thing is, when I go out to the balcony to hang the laundry, the woman next door is always there, just watching me." May chuckled softly like she was trying to make light of it. "I always say hello, I wave, I smile, but she never waves back. She just stands there, staring, with this really mean look on her face. I don't think she's very nice." The water shut off with a final splash. Mandy didn't respond right away. She felt her stomach twist. Her mouth went dry. because as far as she knew, no one lived next door. Mandy's heart sank. She said nothing to May, didn't tell her the truth, that the unit next door was supposed to be empty. She didn't want to scare her, but inside, Mandy's unease was building fast. That afternoon, she messaged a few close friends, the kind who did believe in ghosts, in spirits, in the unseen. She didn't go into too much detail, just asked if they knew anyone who could help with something strange. By evening, she had a name, a Taoist priest, one who helped her friend in a similar situation. He agreed to come by the next day. Mandy would be off work again, another PTO day. Howard would be in the office, and the kids would be at school. It would be the perfect time to cleanse the flat, if that's what it came to. That night, Mandy had trouble sleeping again. The noises were back. Muffled voices, low, strained, like someone arguing. Furniture shifting. Something scraping across the floor. She sat up, heart beating fast, and slowly got out of bed. In the darkness, she pressed her ear on the wall behind the headboard. Silence. She pulled her head back, unnerved now. And then, a sudden burst of violent knocking slammed through the wall. Mandy gasped and stumbled backwards, heart racing. The room fell silent again. She stood there frozen, staring at the wall. Nothing. Trying to calm herself, Mandy stepped out to the kitchen to get a glass of water. That's when she noticed it. The balcony door was wide open. A cold breeze moved through the living room. And standing just outside, lit faintly by the glow of the city, was May. She was barefoot, still wearing her pajamas, just standing there, staring toward the flat next door. Mandy blinked. "May?" she called softly. "What are you doing out there so late?" No response. May didn't move, didn't turn around. It was like she was in a trance. Then, without a word, May placed her hands on the balcony railing and began to lift one leg up, slowly, deliberately, as if she was about to climb over. Mandy's body moved before her brain could catch up. She rushed forward and grabbed May, pulling her back with all her strength. They both collapsed onto the floor inside the flat, hard. May blinked rapidly, dazed. "Ma'am? What happened?" she whispered. "Why am I out here?" She had no idea what she just done. No memory of opening the door or standing on the balcony, let alone trying to climb the railing. Mandy helped her up, saying that she must have been sleepwalking. She led her quietly back to her room, pulled the blankets up around her, and came back out to lock the balcony door. Then, she returned to her own room, closing the door behind her. She didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, after Howard left to go to work, and May was out walking the kids to school, the Taoist priest arrived, just as promised. Mandy welcomed him inside and offered tea, though he politely declined. She sat with him and explained everything. The noises on the wall, the blinds opening on their own, May's strange encounter, and the hand that she saw when the blinds were opening on their own. The priest listened quietly, nodding occasionally. His expression was calm but unreadable as he was looking around the apartment. When she finished, he didn't ask to see the rest of the flat. "The issue," he said simply, "is not in here. It's next door." The woman who died, her spirit, hadn't crossed over. And though she hadn't died in Mandy's apartment, their flats were physically connected, sharing a wall, a balcony sightline, and possibly even a spiritual gateway. In Taoist belief, he explained, the yin energy, yamhei, as well as the spirit, can bleed across walls, especially since the two units are so close. This is why surrounding units, even above or below a hongzak, are usually affected as well. Since he didn't have access to the hongzak next door, he couldn't seal the spirit where she belonged, but he could build a barrier, a spiritual shield, to prevent her from entering this unit again. She's already reached in with her hand. That means if she wanted to, she could come in completely, if she hasn't already. The ritual he would perform was called saat, the suppression of evil forces. Not a banishment, not destruction, but a containment, a spiritual redirection meant to keep the influence out. He began to work quietly. He lit incense in each corner of the flat, chanting softly under his breath. He pasted yellow talismans, painted with red cinnabar ink, on the shared bedroom wall, the balcony door, and the living room window. Each one had a symbol designed to ward off wandering spirits and to seal energetic entry points. At the balcony, he burned a folded paper offering, a symbolic gift for the dead. and scattered blessed water along the threshold. Inside, he used a small bronze bell to break up lingering energy, the clear ring echoing through the room. Finally, he stood still in the center of the flat, chanting one final verse, a passage meant to guide lost souls away and return balance to the home. When it was over, he advised Mandy, "You should continue to keep the blinds closed whenever possible. Don't speak to her even if she appears again, and just call me if anything else happens." Mandy thanked him and gave him a red envelope as a donation. He gave a respectful bow and then quietly made his way out. Mandy stood at the door for a moment, watching him disappear down the hallway. She knew Howard wouldn't be thrilled when he came home and saw talismans stuck to the walls, especially the one behind their bed, but he'll get over it. After everything she's seen, better safe than sorry. After the ritual, things quieted down. The banging on the walls stopped, the blinds stayed shut, and May never sleepwalked again. There were still moments, small ones. Sometimes, late at night, Mandy would lie awake and still hear faint voices through the wall. But it was never loud, never aggressive, just murmurs, like a memory that hadn't quite faded. The talismans stayed where the priest had placed them. Mandy told Howard that they were for good luck. He rolled his eyes, but didn't argue. She told May the same. "Clean around them, but don't take them down," she said gently. "They keep the home safe." May nodded, accepting it without question. A few weeks passed by. Things felt normal again, but curiosity lingered. One morning, when May was folding laundry, Mandy finally asked, "Hey May, do you still ever see that woman next door?" May paused, hands still for a moment. "Sometimes," she said softly. "Not often. Maybe once a month?" She didn't sound scared, just matter of fact. Before, she used to stand on the balcony and stare at me every time I went out to hang laundry, angry, like she hated me. But now, I only see her inside her own living room, just walking around her own flat. She doesn't look at me anymore, but for the most part, it was rare to see her at all. So, what exactly happened here? Were May and Mandy just seeing and hearing things? Why were they the only ones who experienced anything, while the rest of the family didn't? Was it all in their heads? Or was something paranormal really happening here? Here's what I think happened. In traditional Chinese belief, some people are said to be more sensitive to yin energy. We call this yang pei chong in Cantonese, which means they carry heavy yin energy in their body. These people are more prone to sensing things others can't, hearing voices, feeling unseen presence, or even seeing full apparitions. Not everyone is equally affected by spirits. In fact, if someone isn't naturally receptive, it can be hard for them to even believe spirits exist, because to them, they don't. Now, children are usually more receptive, but they tend to grow out of it by the time they're around 7 or 8 years old. In this story, Mandy's kids were 13 and 15, well past that age, so it makes sense why they couldn't experience anything. Only May actually saw the ghost. Mandy only heard things, and once saw the hand of the spirit. Spirits are often drawn to people who are alone often, like May during the day, stressed or emotionally open, like Mandy. And in Taoist belief, women in general are considered more yin than men, especially during periods of stress or emotional exhaustion. So you had two women, both open, vulnerable in different ways, and both quietly marked by the spiritual proximity of the Hongzha next door. Now, we've talked about some of these concepts in earlier episodes, so I won't go too deep into them again, but I do want to circle back to the idea of Hongzha and why it carries such heavy stigma in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has one of the most superstitious cultures in the world. A Hongzha, a home where someone has died, especially from someone ending their own life or violence, is considered spiritually polluted. Most people in Hong Kong won't just refuse to live in one. They won't even live in one next door or above or directly across the hall. It's believed that the space is infused with death energy, or worse, the spirit of the deceased, still lingering if they weren't properly crossed over. That energy doesn't just disappear on its own. It has to be cleansed, or it will still cling to the walls, the windows, even the air. Sometimes these units sit empty for years, and yes, There are some infamous jaak cases in Hong Kong. If you're interested, I'd be more than happy to cover a few of these in future episodes. Some of you might already be familiar with them, so I'll look into sharing some of those with you soon in future episodes. But that's for another night. Thanks so much for joining me this week and listening up to this point. Looking forward to speaking with you again next week.